For the horn along, this is what we're knitting. We're knitting the Unicornucopia shawl. It's a brioche shawl. And we're going to go over everything you need to know if you've ever wanted to learn how to brioche knit. So there is the pattern. It's on Pay Hip or on Ravelry by Carissa Browning. It's absolutely delightful. You need 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn. That's all you need. And we are going to go, well, and needles and stitch markers. But we're going to go over everything you need to know about how to brioche. So, and we're going to cast this on stream, so you can learn how to knit it. And we're also going to do single pass brioche. So normally for brioche, you knit the row in one color, and then you have to have, so for brioche, you have to have circular needles, because you usually knit one row and then slide it back to the beginning of the needles and then knit that same row with the second color. So you knit every row twice. So it'll be row 1 with one color, row 1 with color A, row 1 with color B. Wrong side, row 2 with color A, row 2 with color B. Right side, row 3 with color A, row 3 with color B. So repeat until you finally figure out how to brioche. So we're going to go over everything you need to know. So we're going to knit a swatch, and the swatch is also going to be practicing how to learn brioche. We are going to knit a swatch. So we're going to knit a swatch in regular brioche. We're going to go over all the regular brioche basics. Then we're going to knit a swatch in single pass brioche and go over all of the single pass brioche basics. So y'all are going to be professionals. This was one of the things that y'all unlocked from a charity stream last Saturday. And y'all blew it out of the water, so I'm extremely happy to do this. Excuse me. On that note, if you guys had not heard, our final tally for the fundraiser last weekend was $1,930 that y'all raised for To Write Love on Our Arms. And I even forgot that this month was Suicide Prevention Month, which honestly would have been a perfect tie-in if I had done the research. Today, is it today? Saturday, September 10th. Yes, today is World Suicide Prevention Day. So reach out to someone who's having a hard time and tell them you love them and that it'll be okay and that you're happy that they're here. Y'all should do it every day, but do it especially today. Think of someone who's having a super rough time that you haven't talked to lately and reach out to them. Tell them it'll be okay. Tell them you're thinking about them. Tell them that you miss them. Tell them that it wouldn't be the same if they weren't here. Everybody wants to know that they're valued and that they're loved and that they're missed. So do that. Mary, hello. Darn adulting cuts into playing with yarn. Yes, it does, and it's rude. All right, so on this note, talking about brioche. Today, we're going to talk about brioche color theory. So, the colors that you pick for brioche are very important. So there's a main color, which is the whitish color you see here, and then there's a secondary color, which is the kind of maroonish brown you see on the back. So you have a color that highlights the pattern, and then you have a background color. And then of course brioche is reversible, so the other side's the opposite. But really it's picking the colors that's the important part. So I have a ton of examples. So we're going to go through and kind of look at a lot of, I tried to pick as many different colors as possible so you guys could see what different colored effects had and how it looks. So with speckled yarn, you have to make sure that the speckles are not the same color as the background. Otherwise, it really kind of skews the pattern. So if this were like our newspaper pullover where everything's in straight lines, if it kind of blends together more, it's not the end of the world. because your eyes automatically can see what the pattern's supposed to look like. But because this has a more designed pattern, you don't want to pick a primary color or this white yarn that blends into the background too much. That's harder to see. So let's look at a bunch of examples and let's talk some color theory. So the first example I have here is another Unicornucopia shawl. This one's a little bit more subtle, so it doesn't have to be super standouty. Also, she did this one in multiple skeins. This thing is huge. But you can see here, so this front color is definitely lighter. It's definitely a different value. If we were to put this in black and white, you could definitely see one color versus the other color, right? So this front color is very light and has more of the orangey, whereas the back color has more of that pink. So it does stand out. It's a little bit more subtle, but you can definitely see the pattern, and you can definitely tell that it's one side versus the other side. If y'all have questions, stop me, or if I'm going too fast, stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep trucking. We're going to look at all the pretty things. All right, next example. So this is a newspaper pullover, but I got it because I pulled it out because the colors, it's rainbow. It's very fun. But you can see how, so if you picked the rainbow color yarn as your main color, that white almost disappears entirely. Whereas if you pick a white color over the rainbow, then that rainbow gives a really cool subtle undertone. So when we swatch, we're going to practice both colors being the main color so that you can kind of take a look and see for yourself. So having like a gradient or a self-striping isn't a bad thing. It's just going to make your pattern busier. So you'll just have to keep that in mind. But it does look really cool and it does stand out really nicely. So you can kind of tell here the rainbow takes over and you lose that white almost completely. Whereas if the white is the main color, you get that undertone. So maybe if you want a really fun background color, make sure that you stick with a really solid front color. You don't want two speckled yarns. So this one looks kind of weird because they're both so highly variegated. Usually you want one that's more of a solid color and then a funner yarn. Will help kind of make this a little less muddy for you. So this is a really good example. If you're using a really fun color, you want that secondary color to be bolder. Solid. Here is an example of what I would not suggest doing. This is fun. It's really cool, but it's this one, because there's no pattern to the background. So let me rephrase this. It looks super cool on this sweater because the sweater is all straight lines. But if you put this into a design, it's too variegated. It's too busy. It's going to make your shawl look really muddy. Which isn't the effect you're going for. It's cool on a sweater because it kind of tones the stripes down, but it's not going to look as good in a design. And we'll get to some design brioche here in a minute, so y'all can see what I'm talking about. This one's a great example. Brioche, it doesn't have to be bold for your two colors. They can be more subtle if you want something that you can like wear to work, or if like crazy isn't your thing. So this is really fun. A really fun example of a darker color and a lighter color of the same shade. But the important thing is they're different enough so you can see the contrast. Because if you can't see the contrast, then you're doing all of this work for nothing. But it can be really fun. Like if you have a darker shade of purple and a lighter shade of purple, you can come up with some really cool stuff. It doesn't have to be super black or white. It just needs to be contrasted enough to where you can tell the difference between the colors. Moving on. This one's a fun example. It's a gradient. So it starts off with this purpley and it moves down. I know these aren't all the best pictures, and they put multiple pictures of the same project in here. I think this one's the best one. But if you want to do like a gradient for one color and a solid for another color, that's also something that could look really cool. Gradients in brioche actually turn out really nicely usually. This one's an example of two colors I wouldn't necessarily put together, but it's fun. Brioche makes everything more fun because it really blends the colors. So like if you were doing solid color stripes, I don't know if I'd say that these two to go together as well, but I really like the effect that they give each other. So if you have two colors and you're like, well, I don't know, make a swatch. See how you feel about them. The swatch, really, you have to swatch for brioche because you have to test those colors together. I know, swatches are not great, but we're going to do it together and it's going to be okay. This is an example of a very highly variegated yarn. So the maroon is a solid color, and then this background color is highly variegated. It's cool. It does take away from the effect. It does make it harder to see. So again, you want to be careful with the speckles and the variegations, especially with like yarns that have a big stripe through them. You may not like how it turns out. You may love it. That may be your jam. The yarns that do I have examples? Of course not. Of course I don't have any handy. But the yarns where they're in the skein and then they have like the one end is a different color than the rest, those are better for planned pooling than for brioche. And if you need an example, I can find some. We can keep going. These are two solid colors and they're great and they're very fun. But I pulled this picture because this is what our swatch is going to look like. So we're going to do half in one color and then half in the other color because not only do we need to make sure that these two colors go together, but we need to decide which one you want to be the main color, because you may think that you want one color to be the main color and then you go, you know what, but this other way really makes it pop. So this is the kind of swatch that we're going to make so you can really kind of tell if you like how it's looking. Fergster, hello, we're talking color theory for our upcoming brioche shawl. Happy weekend. These are two colors. So this is a swatch someone made and then decided they didn't like how it went. And it's a really good point because this, like, while these two are very separate colors and separate values, the variegation on this yellow yarn makes this pattern super hard to see. So they made the swatch and they decided it really wasn't working, and then they switched colors. And again, you know, these are both highly variegated, so the pattern is more subtle, but it still has a pop and it still has a very definite design to it. So because the brioche pattern we're doing is not as fancy as this, these two yarns would work great for this pattern because it still has enough of the vertical lines to where you can tell the pattern, but it's not so close together that you can't see where those lines go. Oh no, where did I leave off? Okay, here. So again, the swatching and getting colors of two different values are very important. Bash, hello, happy brioche day. We're talking all the colors so everyone can pick out their yarn. Because we're starting in a month, so that way everyone has plenty of time to obtain yarn. Let's keep going. Colors. This is another fun one. The background color is super crazy, but this kind of off-white, yellowish color really stands out against it. And again, that's what we're looking for. And this is the wrong side. Still just as nice, but you can really tell how this darker color obscures the pattern. So it's great. It's the yarns are a good difference in value. But most importantly, you can really see this pattern popping out. So this is nice. If this is something that you like, if you are looking for a highly variegated yarn, this is the effect that it would give you. But the other thing I will say is that the variegation is very short, so it doesn't have long stripes of color. If you're going to do a variegated yarn, you want it to change color very quickly, so it gives more. You either want it to be very slow color changes, like the rainbow one, so you can definitely see the pattern, or you want it to be slow color or fast color changes, so it gives more of like a watercolor effect as the background. The stuff in the middle is where it starts looking really muddy because your eye's trying to find the pattern, but it can't quite see it. This one is I super love these colors together, but The pink in this front yarn is almost too similar to the red in the background, to this kind of like dark pink in the background. So it does make the pattern harder to see. So again, you kind of have to decide, do you want your lines to be really bold? Because if you do, you need to pick a bolder color change. Or do you like a softer effect? Because if you're going for subtle, this is a great color choice. Well, I mean, apart from it being hot pink, this is a great color choice for subtle. So as Bob Ross would say, you have to make some decisions. Moving on. I just really like these two colors because they're Atomic Stacy colors. I just thought this was a really fun example. But you can see here how even though this front color has some speckles, because the speckles are different from the back color, it still is a crisp looking design. So it's still easy to see the pattern because they're not blending together. I really like this one. This is a good example. This is the broadleaf sweater here is the first birthday sweater that we knit, which is why I have a bunch of these examples saved. So contrast is a good watchword. Yes, contrast is great. Here's a good example. Two colors that don't blend together but match. You want complementing or contrast. Or both. I was just looking for different color examples at this point. But it's really fun. You can tell it really pops out and makes that difference. She has two different colors. So there's one here that has a really light pink with the green that really stands out. And then the one here that is more the variegated variety. I've just got a billion examples so y'all can just get the brain juices flowing. This is another one to where I don't think I would have necessarily made this decision because this main color yarn has speckles that are the same color as the back color. So it really kind of obscures the pattern, but it does make for a really cool kind of watercolor effect. So again, if you're going for more subtle and this is the look you're going for, it's not bad. But it does, if you're doing all the work for brioche and you want that design to pop out, this would not be the colors that you would choose. Let's put it that way, because it looks fantastic. And it looks more subtle and it looks great on her. But again, it does kind of make the pattern go away. So if that's the look you're going for, or if that's not the look you're going for. But you did such a good job on it. This is another fun one. So these are more complementing versus contrasting. So you really see the pattern popping out in the pinks and the yellows. But the blues kind of blend into this teal background, right? So what kind of effect are you going for? But it is a really cool effect. It's very watery looking. So if you like it, great. If not, don't do that. This is a high contrast, but this is really fun because they made the darker color the main color and made the lighter color the background. So I kind of wanted to show off what that would look like. It can be super fun. And it really makes it bold. And so that's why we're going to swatch, because this is a pattern to where I probably would have put this lighter color in the front. But after looking at this, I really like the effect of the darker color. So that's why we're going to swatch both colors. So you can really kind of tell which one you like more, because you may like this one. I like this one too. So it doesn't have to be light for the main and dark for the background. This is another example where dark is the main color. This one's a little bit more subtle, but it still looks really cool. So again, if you want something a little bit more subtle, this is one to where they're very close, but they're not exact. And again, she just did such a good job knitting it, I had to show it off. More fun with variegation. This variegated stands out a lot more from the background, so you can kind of see it a little bit better. This is super fun because it is super hot. Again, the darker color versus the lighter color as an example, but you can really tell the contrast in this one. So the pattern is going to show up amazingly well. And this is what it looks like when it's blocked out and it's stretched. So you can see that lighter color in the background. So the high contrast is really going to make the design pop. So if you want it to pop and be fun and be kind of a little bit more showy, solid colors are really kind of the way to go. Solid colors are going to be the best bang for your buck when it comes to brioche. But even here, you can tell that this lighter color has very subtle variegations. So it doesn't have to be flat. It doesn't have to be completely solid. You can have slight variegation to it. So like the Knit Picks Kettle Dyed is a really great yarn to use if you want a little bit of movement to that color without it, while it's still being a solid color, if that makes sense. So because these aren't flat, one has the speckles and one has slight variegations, it doesn't look as rigid. It looks a little softer. Again, this is a good example because it has very slight variegations. And it has a huge contrast. It really pops, but again, it still kind of moves. It's not super flat. And because it does have that high variegation, you can still tell that lighter color popping out through the background on the backside. And then last one, these are just two absolute solid colors. But you can really tell because they contrast, it's gonna pop so much. So people tend to go straight for solids. I recommend solids, but you don't have to do solids. So the other thing to note on here for this shawl is that on the pattern, and let me transition here for just a hot second. Here we go. So looking at the pay hip pattern. So in the example for the Unicornucopia shawl, it calls for mohair. So in here, the main color, this lighter color, is just regular fingering weight, and then this rainbow color is mohair. Mohair looks great in brioche. It makes everything look fuzzy and delicious and soft. However, mohair is very hard to unknit because it's so fuzzy, it just kind of wants to felt together and lock all your stitches in place. So if you're a beginner brioche knitter, I do not recommend going with mohair. I am not going with mohair because it's going to make it a little bit harder to see the stitch definition when we're knitting it together, for an example. So if you're a beginner brioche knitter, I don't recommend using mohair because if you mess up or you want to rip back, it's going to be really hard to do so when that mohair kind of locks together. You really have to pull your stitches apart. And then the more you unknit and reknit mohair, the more weird it starts looking. So if you're a beginner knitter, I don't recommend doing it, even though the pattern says to. So looking down here, so there's the main color of fingering weight yarn, 100-gram skein. And then the secondary color here is mohair, but is DK mohair because mohair is so fine, you have to size up for it. So really what you need though, instead of the mohair, is two skeins of fingering weight yarn, 2 100-gram skeins. That's all you need. US 5s, and then a tapestry needle to weave in ends, and then lots of stitch markers. And I definitely recommend removable stitch markers because at the very, very beginning, you're definitely going to need a marker where you can notate the right side versus wrong side until you are more confident in brioche. Having a marker that's right side versus wrong side is very helpful. And in brioche, having markers that notate the increases and the decreases are really nice. So removable stitch markers, tapestry needle to weave in ends, US 5 needles or needles needed to obtain gauge. And then 2 100-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. Any fingering weight will do. If you have a sock yarn, a quote unquote sock yarn. So if you got a skein of fingering weight yarn and you were getting it to make socks, and come to find out it's only a 2-ply. 2-ply yarn isn't quite as sturdy as a 4-ply yarn, obviously. Or you got it and it's 100% merino and you're too tough on your socks and you needed some nylon or silk or bamboo to add strength. These are great. This is a great project to use up that sock yarn that you got and then we're bummed you couldn't make socks out of, if that's a thing that you do. So there we go. Hopefully that should be everything you need to know about how to pick out colors. Again, when we swatch, we're going to make a swatch very similar to this one. We're not going to change colors quite so often. So we're going to do half of it in one color and half of it in the other color so that you can really see what color you want to be that main color for you. Oops, sorry. There we go. So you can really see what color you want to be that main color. So we'll do half in one color and half in the other color. And on swatch day, I'm going to make 2 swatches. We're going to do one in standard brioche where we're going to go over, and the beauty of doing the swatch is it is the best practice for how to learn brioche. So we are going to practice, we're going to learn / practice / swatch. So we're going to do one swatch that's all standard traditional brioche, 2-pass brioche. And then we're going to do and then once we get that basic down, we're going to do a second swatch that's single pass brioche. And if you're trying to, where we knit both colors at the same time, instead of knitting every row twice, we're going to knit it together. If you're a beginner to brioche and you're looking to do 2-pass brioche, I highly recommend knitting both. 2 reasons. 1, if you already know the basics of brioche, it makes 2-pass brioche much easier. It helps it click into place. 2, your single pass brioche and your double pass and your standard traditional brioche may look different. And you, based upon how your tension is or how you hold your stitches, and you may like the effect of one versus the other. So it's going to be very important to learn if it looks different, and if it does look different, which one do you like more? So we're going to knit 2 swatches, and I need to find the date for when we're going to do that. Actually, let's do that together. Let's look. Let's look at the calendar. So we are casting on the 15th. So swatching night is going to be at that Thursday beforehand, the 13th. That should work out well. That'll give everyone 2 days before we cast on. So let's go to the Discord and let's make an event. Let's make a swatch event for Thursday night, the 13th. Create event somewhere else. All right. Y'all are really quiet. So that either means I'm doing a really good job or y'all have a lot of questions that you're holding until the end. So now's the time for questions. I know it was a ton of information. You're doing great. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Let's put our brioche basic tutorial / swatch. That will be October 13th. You know what? Let's make it the 11th. Because if we run out of time, then we can keep going on the 13th. So let's make it the 11th at 7 p.m. And then let's steal this picture of the swatch, because that's a good example of a swatch. No questions yet, just mentally going through my stash. So I have pulled out a couple colors that I'm going to use as examples. We'll get that here in just a second. Back. Add image. Next, create event. There we go. Beautiful. In the books, in the Discord. All right. I'm gonna come over there and make you show me all over again. Gingers don't do it. I missed everything. I slept in because I desperately needed to catch up on sleep. That's okay. So in the doobly-doo at the bottom. So if you click my name and you go to videos, we have collections. Here, I'll show you. I'll show you. Mute tab. Nobody needs to hear me talking. All right. Streamception. Here we go. Boop. Hello, me from the past. All right, so if you go down and you click my name, boop, and you come here to videos, we have all the collections. So there's recent broadcasts, right? So there's all the videos from our Toasty Toe Along on how to make socks. All how to knit socks from start to finish. Highlights and uploads. That's usually just clips. So we have our second annual Floof to Foot series. So this was also how to spin yarn from start to finish to make socks and how to knit socks. Here, let's go to collections because there's more. There we go. So there's special events. This is where the the World of Tanks streams end up, our charity streams, our anniversary streams all end up in our special events. We have our Toasty Toe Along, and we have our Floof to Foot, and there's going to be another collection, and it's going to say the Horn Along. It's going to say Brioche Along. Brioche Horn Along. It's going to say something like that. So I'm going to clip that, what we just went over. I'm going to clip it, and it's going to say Brioche Color Theory, and then you can go back and you can reference it. So everything that we do, so if you miss anything or you need to go back and reference it, I'm going to have all the highlights in one spot exactly where you need it so you can see all the brioche that you need. Horny bread. Stop it. Stop it. It's just going to say, let's get that bread. So I will highlight what we just went over because I know we did it early and I know more people hop in as stream goes through, but it will be there for your reference. All right, let's play with some yarn. Let's play with yarn. So we'll zoom out a smidge. I have some yarn colors that I haven't decided what I'm going to use yet, but it's looking like a pastel. It's looking like this is going to be very pastel. So colors for thought, right? It's a little bit more green in real life. But it's a nice solid dark color, lots of contrast. So I was thinking about doing something like this. So the pink is variegated, but this is not. So I feel like, and because the pink variegation doesn't have any blues or greens to it, it'll still really pop. So this is one I'm looking at. I'm also looking at something like this. Here we go. It's a very light mint. There we go. Very light and minty. The purple is variegated, but again, it's not, and all the variegations are different colors. So these pop really nicely together. Also, these two, because they're both variegated, it'll be very watercolory. It'll have more of that kind of fluid effect to it. But again, even the pinker parts of this are still too purpley to blend in with this. So it's going to be really different. So it's still going to be very different. On brand with the mint and the purple, I know. But I was like, maybe that's too on the nose. So I do really like these two, and I do really like these two, but I'd be remiss if I didn't go like, but these also. So I haven't decided how I'm going to do it. These two would work. There we go. So these two would work together, but because they're both lighter, it would be harder to see. So not a no, but again, are you going for a little bit more subtle or are you going for bold? I'm going for bold because of course I am. Of course I am. You could do the same with these two. Darker colors, so they would be more subtle, but because there's still enough of a contrast between them and they're not enough of the same color, these would probably work together. These would be the most subtle of all because they're both in a blue tone together. So again, there's a lot of contrast, but looking further away, it would be very, very blue tone, cool tones. So this would be the one that had the least amount of contrast out of all of them. But it would work because again, there's enough of a physical contrast between the two. You like the pink and the purple best? I am kind of leaning this way. I do like these very much. I definitely want to use the pink. I just feel like this pink screams unicorn to me. I also feel like the watercolor would look really cool. Since they're both slightly variegated, I feel like it could be a really cool effect. I'll probably cake all of these up and then we'll see how I feel on swatching day. Because again, we may knit these up and then decide that they're too similar or that it's too kind of watery looking and that we need a more solid color. In which case I'll probably either switch to this one or this one. So I'll probably just cake all of them up. 200 grams. Yes. So, two 100 gram skeins. This should be a 2 skein project. So this one's, the title of this is a mini. So it'll be bigger than this, but this is the best example. It may, you may have to, but it may not be as big as, so this is the example. It may not be this big. We may have to take off like the last repeat if we run out of yarn, right? But it will definitely be bigger than this. This one is very much a little scarflet. So it's going to be bigger, but this one's the best example of what the pattern looks like when it's completed, that I could find. Cause all the pictures people have of it is like draped around their neck. You actually can't see that it makes a unicorn horn. So that's why I've been using this picture so that everyone can see. Oh, look, I am showing something, but you can't see it. Thanks. All right. So this is the picture I keep showing, but it's going to be bigger than this. But I keep showing this picture because it shows what it looks like all in one picture. So it'll be this, but bigger. It will be more this size. So more of an actual shawl size. But it should be, the pattern calls for 2 100 gram skeins. So again, we may have to take off a repeat if we are playing yarn chicken or run out of yarn. But because we're knitting I'm going to knit this whole thing start to finish only on stream. So if when we're knitting it, we run out of yarn, we're going to be keeping an eye on it as we go. So it should be just a 2 skein project. And like I said, worst comes to worst, if we start running out of yarn, we take off this last repeat. So it may not be quite this big since we're not using mohair, but again, it says that you just need 2 100-gram skeins, and from the other projects on Ravelry that I've looked at, does seem to be the case. This one is 1/3 of a skein and 1/3 of a skein, so it's literally just enough to like drape around your neck kind of thing. But again, it shows the pattern the best, so it's going to be this but way bigger, if that makes sense. It's going to be this but this. Does it have to be fingering? Technically no. But math. Yeah, you absolutely. So the pattern is for brioche, right? But there would be math involved. So for one, you'd have to adjust your needle size. Because this is on US 5s for brioche. So if you were using worsted, you'd have to use like... Honestly, I'd start with 8s or 9s. So it would definitely be bigger. And you would definitely... So, and you could follow the pattern as written, so that shouldn't be a problem. It would scale up, but it would still scale in a triangle. Your ending point is going to be a bigger concern here. So it may not, you may make more of a this size shawl, but worsted. So if you were using a different weight, you'd really have to be weighing your yarn as you went so that you could kind of judge how much yarn you were using or be willing to play yarn chicken. But I don't see why you couldn't. It would just be, you'd have less repeats, but it would be huge. So it wouldn't matter. So it would just be a larger scale. But I don't see why not. Because brioche scales, so. I have so much cotton, my skeins are 142 grams. I think that would actually be in your favor. I think 2 of those, 2 142 gram skeins, should do it. Because you would definitely need more yardage. The other thing you have to think about is it's going to be hella fluffy and hella warm. So the thing about brioche is because it's so light and airy, it captures that heat. Brioche is all air, right? Brioche bread is full of air. Brioche knitting is no different. Of course, I put my brioche hat away when I was cleaning yesterday. So brioche makes everything really squishy, and it's very warm because it traps that extra air in. You do live in the hinterlands. It will be perfect. I do have an example of a brioche worsted weight. Hold on. It's going to look like this. Please hold. I have the perfect example. Okay, so this is in DK, but it has the brioche to it. So this is Ramble by Andrea Mowry. But here we go. Boop. So this is a DK weight shawl, but you can tell how it scales up and immediately gets squishier and bigger and thicker. So yours is going to be the same. It's going to be even bigger and thicker, than this. But it's a good example of kind of how it scales up. It's also going to lose some of that. It's going to lose some of the drape, but the cotton has way more drape. So I think it'll actually really work out well for you, Punk. Can you see if that's cotton or acrylic? This one, what this is knit in, I can guarantee you it's wool. Because it's Andrea Mowry. Who's a fantastic knitting designer, and I really like her stuff, but price point accessibility is a problem with her work. All of her recommended yarns are the world's most expensive yarns. She knit this in fancy schmancy. She knit this in Northlight Fibers Water Street. What is that? It's cashmere, 40% cashmere, 60% merino. Very luxe. Very fancy schmancy. Blue gradient sparkle or rainbow. Blue gradient sparkle. Duh. That's out of my budget. It's out of everybody's budget. That's the point. And none of her patterns have like, a lot of designers will be like, hey, I knit it in this and I recommend this. But if, you know, this is out of your price point, you can also use this one or this one. She doesn't. She just makes she just makes the nicest stuff out of the most expensive yarn. And then you're kind of on your own to pick. Again, not that you have to use what she does. Like, her patterns are great. They're really well written. The pattern pricing themselves are decently priced. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're decently priced for what you get because they're really well tested and they're really well tech edited. But you have to do a lot of research to find different yarns, which scares a lot of people off. Andrew Maui makes me want spin cycle yarn so bad, and it's so expensive. Yes. So I like her stuff, but I'm also like, I feel really weird recommending it because, like, if you're a beginner knitter, it's so intimidating. Like, the pattern's not intimidating, but the yarn picks, like, it's really, if you're just beginning and you don't know, like, it's really difficult. So I hate it. I hate it because a lot of people, and there are people who are very like by the book, and they're like, you have to knit the pattern and the yarn suggested. And that's just out of so many price points. So I just feel really weird recommending her. As a person, she's a great person. But I feel weird when it comes to her patterns. Because there are other designers, and I'm like, do not buy from these humans. They are garbage. They're racist and sexist and weird, and I hate, and don't do it. And they're not size inclusive and blah, blah, blah. And Andrea Mowry, her stuff isn't the most size inclusive, but I mean, it's good enough. And she has gone back and regraded a lot of her patterns for larger stuff, but there's a lot of room for improvement. Let's just leave it at that. Sturgis, hello. Here, take the last of my tawdry biddies. Thank you. I appreciate it, Sturgis. I hope you're doing well. Happy weekend. Thank you for the biddies. Little love in my teacup. I just bought her What the Fade pattern and was going to use it with my advent calendar from last year, but I don't know how to adjust the colors. It calls for 6 colors, not 24. So on the pattern, where it has the fade portion, how many rows is that over? Because you could just keep repeating that over and over and over again and just shorten all the sections. I'm sure we could math it out. I'm sure we could. We have the technology. Punk Pixie, thank you for the biddies. All those little rainbows in my teacup. Oh, so cute. Let me look. Mowry. Did I buy a What the Fade? I don't think I did. Your cup looked empty. It was. Got my new chair yesterday. Changed up the apartment, so hopefully it's a better change to promote me, get me up and get moving. Good. I hope the feng shui has significantly improved. It's also brioche, so I might wait into your tutorial since I haven't done it before. Ooh. I like the colors on the keyboard. They are Atomic Stacy colors. It fades from teal to purple. Everything is Atomic Stacy colors in this office. They're also the same colors that are on my Go XLR. We hella purple mint here. In case you couldn't tell. In case you couldn't tell, it's a theme. I lean very heavily into this theme. I'm very okay with this theme. What the fade? What's the fade? Because not only half of it's brioche. Because the fade sections aren't too bad. You could math it all, Crafty. I have faith in you. I started knitting an advent calendar. It feels too early. Is it last year's advent calendar? Because in that case, you're just late. All Crafty, if you're looking for brioche tutorial, we're going to tell you everything you need to know. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. You know what? And I'm going to update the Discord. So we have brioche tutorial part 1 and brioche tutorial part 2. Because I think it's really going to be... I think it's going to be a two-stream tutorial. Because I also forgot increases and decreases. So let's edit event. So that week we'll have part 1, save event, create event, brioche, part 2. Because I really want to make sure we take our time on this one. So we'll do it over 2. We'll do our tutorial over 2 streams. Edit. Next. Part 2. Next. Save. All right. So it'll be brioche week. The week of October 10th.